Alright, I thought I was done with the standard deck teachings. Whispers of the Old Gods has just come out, but 3 months in, it looks like we've finally gotten a pretty refined version of the Yogg Druid in the month of June. Fretless, as well as many other players, hit a very high legend rank. I'm talking top 100 legend with about this deck list. And I credit Fretless with this particular list. Why this deck? Why no gadgets and auctioneers? Why are there one-ofs of a few cards? So we'll start off with, there's the basics of a Druid list here. We've got Innervate, Living Roots, Wild Growth, Wrath. Finally, a deck has managed to fit in 2 Mire Keeper, which has always been thought of as a strong card, but it has surprisingly been absent for the first, 2 months of Whispers of the Old Gods. People put it in, then couldn't really find the space to keep it in. This deck just looks really refined. The one-ofs, Feral Rage, Mulch, Savage Roar, Ancient of War, all to be used in very specific timings, so makes sense why they're all one-ofs. Fandral Staghelm is a house in this deck. It doubles up a very important spell such as Raven Idol, so even if you have a Raven Idol, you might want to consider keeping it just to play it with Fandral Staghelm if you have the spare mana to play it. You can also use Violet Teacher to combo with Raven Idol. Its core is a little bit of Token Druid as well. It's got the classic Violet Teacher Power of the Wild going for it, which can lead to some very strong openings with Living Roots as well, getting buffed with Power of the Wild. It's a solid mid-range deck. You can have very big swing turns with Fandral if you cast it with any of Living Roots, Power of the Wild, Wrath, Feral Rage, and Cenarius if you somehow let that happen. It's not that exceptional for Fandral Staghelm to stay on the board 1 turn and then you follow up with Cenarius. And surely I said Raven Idol on that list too, Fandral Staghelm. And if you get Raven Idol from Raven Idol, you can play Raven Idol again and get massive value basically. The deck has a lot of ramp to it with 2 Wild Growth, 2 Mire Keeper, and 2 Nourish. And yes, you do use Nourish for ramp if appropriate, if your hand is big enough, and if you are up against a deck that you expect to go long. Or actually, if Nourish for mana is even faster than Nourish for cards, so against aggro you tend to Nourish for mana, just so you can keep up. Oh, and of course at the end you have Yogg Hope's End. You usually play Yogg when you are behind, and then a good amount of the time you'll actually be ahead after, because there's a lot of spells, Yogg tends to clear the board, Yogg tends to give you stuff. Yogg tends to put stuff on the board on your side, like secrets or summons. Praise Yogg. No Gadgets and Auctioneer in this deck just because it is too clunky. No Druid of the Claw simply because Azure Drake is thought to be better. According to Fretless at least.
Your soul shall be mine.
One of the nice things about this deck is just its solidness. It's very sturdy, and thus its win rate against most decks is at worst 45%, and it has some good matchups. You're looking to keep Innervate, Wild Growth, Living Roots against most players. Here I've got a Wild Growth into a Mire Keeper. I'm willing to keep all of this hand, because after I get the essentials of Wild Growth and Mire Keeper down, and I would only keep Mire Keeper with Innervate or Wild Growth, then I can do Teacher into Wrath, and that is likely to be fast enough against a Zoo. I can even spend the coin here. I was going to do Wild Growth on 2 into Mire Keeper on 3. On turn 4 I will have access to 6 mana, and then I can play Teacher Wrath. I will continue that because even though I could coin out Wild Growth, it doesn't really speed anything along, right? There's also the possibility of coining the Hero Power or coining the Wrath for 1 on this Argent Squire, but I basically have everything I want.
Why do you call?
The coin can be pretty valuable. It can be scary to cast Wild Growth while the opponent's hitting you with their early minions, but usually that is the right play over Wrath. Since Wild Growth gives you an extra mana every single turn, until you get to 10 mana, so you get an advantage for the next 6 turns for the cost of taking the damage now. Now what is going to be a little scary is whether or not I should Wrath the Flame Imp next turn since I got a Wild Growth, or whether I should just play Mire Keeper and then get Mana Crystal that way. The best draw to get would be Living Roots. If I did get Living Roots, then Living Roots is a good answer to that Imp. I can do something like Teacher, Coin, Living Roots. Stop a lot of the bleeding. Barring that though, I think Mire Keeper for mana into Teacher Wrath as the entire world burns around you is still okay. And then hope to draw Swipe. So he's hitting for 8 damage next turn. And at a time like this, you still have to be sturdy and say, okay, if I gain this mana, I will be able to use it and hopefully clear the board with it eventually. Or perhaps I want the 2/2 here, since I can always go Teacher, Coin, Wrath next turn. Yeah, the 2/2 is more useful in this situation.
The land serves me.
I think it would be a bit premature to do Wrath here on the 3/2 and the 2/2. The reason is the Teacher, Coin, Wrath gives you a bigger benefit. Plus, that stuff could eventually die with the Swipe, which I don't have in my hand, but you have to sometimes count on drawing. And I played a slow a slow solution because I have to. You clear now, and then you don't have the fast clear for that 2/5 there. Savage Roar could be played. He's out of a hand, so even though this looks pretty hopeless, there's a glimmer of hope. Savage Roar, use this to clear that, use this to clear that, use this to clear that, and then Wrath. And then that doesn't look so bad. So, Savage Roar, Wrath. Yeah, I meant to kill a 3/2 with the Wrath instead of the 2/2. Took 1 extra damage. I thought I'd already attacked with the hero for some reason. But this is starting to turn around a little bit. The amount of damage coming in is much smaller, and it depends on what he draws. The quality of how big a card he plays this turn is going to matter a lot. There is the Feral Rage to gain 8 armor at the end to stabilize, if the board should get into a position where I'm slightly in favor.
Get in there and fight, maggot.
This is where it's starting to swing around. Feral Rage to gain 8 armor could be enough here. It is important to have a board presence, but I don't think I can go down to within 2 of lethal. Which would happen if I played Teacher Wrath. I could Teacher Coin Feral Rage. That's actually better because it gives me a fighting board the next turn.
Pay attention, class.
I'm ready to
Worth mentioning, if I had hit the proper target, I would be at 5. And if I were at 5, I would feel more comfortable playing Teacher and then wrathing this for 1 and then trading that and then maybe 2 against my 5. Where only Power Overwhelming or Soulfire would kill me, and I'd be willing to take that. No, I still wouldn't be willing to take that risk. Anyways, this is starting to turn around though. Yogg is here. I might play the Wild Growth in order to speed towards Yogg, get it a turn earlier, and then perhaps he can catch me up from behind. Yogg sometimes can save you from a completely hopeless situation. Oh, or I lost. Oops, I took 1 extra damage. Look, if I hadn't taken that 1 extra damage though, this board could be stabilized. Like, I kill all of his stuff, and then I just stabilize from there since the zoo doesn't have any charge other than Leroy Jenkins. Oops.
Let the hunt begin. I must protect the wild.
This is a strong opening with the Living Roots on the start and the Wrath to deal with his 3/2. early on. Into the Mire Keeper, which ramps into the Azure Drake. With Druid, you're pretty much looking to do mana efficient plays. See Trump Basic Teachings Mana Efficiency if you'd like a more detailed explanation of how to play on curve. A hand like this is pretty ideal. You get a lot of variations on this. You can innervate the Mire Keeper, you can just play Wild Growth, that's a ramp. Maybe you have Innervate and Nourish, and then you Nourish for 2 mana. It just turns out that between Wild Growth, Mire Keeper, and Nourish, not having a ramp in your hand is actually the exception, as opposed to something that just happens. It might be worth talking about the case of Raven Idol. If I had Raven Idol in my opening hand there and not Living Roots, I would play it in this matchup, but against a slower matchup I would keep the Raven Idol in hopes of playing it with Fandral Staghelm, or just playing it in the late game for a minion. Hey look, it's Raven Idol. That's the case of turn 1 though. On turn 2, given that I'm so close to carrying out my plan of Coin Mire Keeper on 3 and Azure Drake on 4, it doesn't seem like I need to look for anything at the moment. It also depends a lot based on your future plans. If you have not so good future plans, then you'll want to play the Idol to look for a plan. But if you have the plan already, there's no need to look for one. You can use the Raven Idol to get an extra 1/1 with the Teacher, or with Fandral, draw an extra card, discover an extra card. Also interesting is with that Nourish, I could double ramp, which is to say I can go Coin Mire Keeper, get the mana, and then I can play Nourish the next turn, get 2 mana, and then I can play Wrath, which might be viable because I do have Drake to play after that, which are big cards. And I have a Raven Idol, which is a pretty big card, some of the time, most of the time. Innervate is interesting. That's a lot of ramp and a lot of decisions. So possibility 1, Innervate and Nourish for mana, and then play the Wrath on the Bear. Possibility 2, Coin Mire Keeper, get the empty mana crystal, and then the next turn play Nourish, and then play the Wrath. The Nourish path for the mana leads you to a total of 6 mana the next turn, which doesn't look that appealing. It's better to have the 5 mana next turn, play the Nourish, and then play the Wrath, given this board state. So really important to stay mana efficient, consider all the possibilities. And it is possible to innervate Wrath there, but this is early in the game and I don't see the need to block 4 damage. By keeping it, I can keep flexible that innervate, because I could draw into something like Yogg or Cenarius and then be able to ramp that out. So, because I have the Azure Drake, I'm willing to go the big route, and as well as with the cycle of the Wrath, I'm continuing to draw cards. So this is also the power of this deck, to be very far ahead of the opponent on mana. I'm going second, which means I started 1 mana behind, but now I'm 3 mana ahead. And thanks to cards like Azure Drake and Nourish for the card draw, and just having big cards, it is possible to continue going. Here I could use the hero power to kill that, but I'm actually going to innervate out another Azure Drake. And there's Yogg around. Raven Idol can now be used, now that I don't have a plan, to go for a big minion. Wrath can be played for 5 damage, which is really good against that 1 card. Wild Growth can be played on 10 mana and actually counts for 2 spells for Yogg in the future. So Raven Idol, get 2 Drakes out there, the spells get really good. But still, I think I don't need a solution right now. I'm gonna go for Minion. That's disappointing. I'll go for Loot Hoarder, just to draw a card, I suppose. The Ooze is likely to be able to hit an Eaglehorn Bow. However...
Time waits for no one.
yeah, Loot Hoarder. And I'll use Mulch. This could be the Hunter's biggest card. It stays rather mana efficient. I keep the Wrath with the 2 spell damages. Could just kill him with Azure Drakes. The fact that the Hunter is running a card called Emperor Thaurissan leads me to also think that he's playing a very spell-based Hunter deck. Which is part of the reason why I also chose Minion over Spell, because the Spell might not have been able to affect very many of his cards. And here's the spells coming to flying. The opponent will likely also have a Yogg Saron at the end. Might be able to see an epic Yogg Saron versus Yogg Saron showdown. Nice card created by Lock and Load for him. The plan is to play Thaurissan and the hero power that. That's probably usually Freezing Trap. And I could also Wrath that for a card. In fact, I will. There's often a question of when do you use Wrath for one card and draw over hero power, and the basics of when to use Wrath for the draw are when you need it. When you don't have a good following in play. When you think that 3 damage is not important. His deck is one that is more based off of spells, so there wouldn't be very many minions to target. So here's where you play Yogg Saron when you're behind, and also before that I get to play Wild Growth to get another 2 spells in the bank. And praise Yogg! Yogg looks completely random because it's random spells, but there's so many cards out there which allow you. Yogg will draw you a bunch of cards often. He'll clear the board a lot of the time. There's cards that say enemy minion. Stuff happens, but oh hey, Flare! Here goes Explosive Trap. Okay. Basically, Yogg draws cards, he plays secrets, he clears stuff. That was pretty good. A little bit overkill on the draw, but I can't complain with that. He cleared the board, he gave me a bunch of cards. Impressive. That's what you call value, Yogg. So a spell-based Hunter is going to have Deadly Shot in their deck. How much damage do I have? That's 2? That's 3. 3 plus 2, 5 plus 4 is 9. There goes my Ancient of War. 3, 5... Oh! Whoa! Unleash the Hound Savage Roar! What? That's 3, 5, 7, 9... well, that's impressive. Praise Yogg. Wait, does this remind you of anything? Praise Yogg.
Protect the wild. Nature must be preserved.
So in this, I will say Druid is a bit of a slower matchup. I'm willing to keep Fandral Staghelm just because it's so powerful. And Living Roots does combo a Fandral Staghelm, but I will also play this on turn 1 just because I need the board presence early. I will never play Raven Idol until I have Fandral Staghelm though, and the longer you can delay playing Fandral Staghelm, the better. And that looks like an aggressive deck. to a bit of surprise. But drawing into a curve here, looks like turn 2 might be a hero power, turn 3 is the Mire Keeper, gain the empty mana crystal, turn 4 play Azure Drake, turn 5 maybe Fandral Raven Idol, but we'll see.
Mind if I roll need?
Here I will actually use the hero power over Living Roots, because the Fandral could
For the wild, can't do that.
get both the Raven Idol and the Living Roots. And the Living Roots would only be 1 extra 1/1 on top of my hero power, plus it would be off curve. A big mistake would be the Living Roots and Raven Idol, especially with Fandral in hand. Looks like the opponent is playing a aggressive deck, possibly a beast deck.
The land serves
I'm not sure what Seto here has. Waiting yet, but I'll keep at it. Play the Azure Drake next, and then the Fandral Raven Idol Living Roots is going to be a very sweet turn.
Mind if I roll need?
I am quite curious to what his deck is all about. Haven't been able to figure it out yet. Looks aggressive.
feel my wrath.
But this is going to be an excellent next turn. And the nice thing is your Raven Idol will pretty much always discover, will very often discover a spell with choose 1. And you might even get a minion with choose 1.
Get in there and fight, maggot. Not that sharp.
Looks like it's get a bunch of stuff out and then Savage Roar is the idea of that deck. Fandral Wrath is also really good when you're dealing with something that has 4 health. There's a little bit of a element of greed with Fandral Staghelm, where the longer you can put off playing all the stuff, the better you're gonna get. Like, if I wait until turn 8 now, I can play Staghelm, Wrath, Living Roots, Raven Idol. And I have a pretty good play this turn, and it's arguably better than the play that I was going to do. Since I take out a guy, and oh, and if I mana ramp, I can play the Fandral next turn. Okay, so I'm gonna do that.
It's me. For the wild.
I was gonna just make a 2/2, but then I talked it through and realized that on on mana 8, I can do Staghelm, Wrath, Living Roots, Raven Idol. For deal 4, draw a card. Deal 2, summon 2 1/1 saplings, and discover 2 cards. That's pretty good, and that's a good target for Wrath. And the Innervate might lead me to be able to do even more stuff. Here we go, the big Fandral turn. Alright, cover. I don't think there's gonna be any BGH targets in that deck. But the other 2 cards are pretty bad too. I will choose the Harpy. It's a big threat. And that is a choose 1. Thought I was always going to play Wrath, but I could have, if I hadn't played Wrath, I could Innervate Starfall. So probably better was to play the Discover first. Anyways, I did draw a card either way. Starfall it is. Living Roots. Then possibly a hero power, but I don't think that's necessary here.
To Northrend.
That's kind of the pool of Fandral Staghelm. You want to keep delaying as long as you can, until you can't possibly do it anymore. And then you get massive value with Fandral. Here's my 6 mana Yeti. Basically as Tomp though, kinda needs to be dealt with.
To Northrend.
Fascinatingly aggressive deck. I can have 8 attack out, and then that'd be 14 with Savage Roar. Or I can play Yogg on. I haven't cast very many spells yet, but playing the Yogg when I'm about to be pretty far ahead is reasonable. It only has a 4-2 to kill. Let's play Yogg. Also important to keep track of how many spells you've cast so far. I know it has not been too many. Yes? Yeah? Oh. Huh? Oh. Yay. Okay. Draw 4. And get a 7-3. That Yogg has just come through with much value. Well, in this game I get to demonstrate both Fandral and Teacher Power of the Wild, I guess. Teacher Power of the Wild is better in the early game. Unless I'm dead. Nah, I can just play the taunt and it'll stabilize. Okay, well, Teacher Power of the Wild would be a pretty powerful play. However, now we have to stay alive. In fact, if he has a mulch for Ancient of War, I guess I lose, huh? Yogg, you should have killed that guy. Oh, but I can Hero Power. Okay, so I have to do this in Hero Power to get out of range of swipe. And hopefully that's good. The card that would have been really good is to draw into a Feral Rage, and then gain 8, and then I would have always won from there, pretty much.
Where shall I strike?
Still good? To be fair, it was a little bit risky to play that Yogg into the 4-2. And perhaps a better play with Ancient of War. Sometimes, though, Yogg will make you mad. That's kind of his thing. My goal is to possibly set up lethal here. Is there any way, while not dying, while not having a risk of dying? Valid Teacher, Power of the Wild buff, and then Savage Roar and Hero Power. I think that's the best way to do it.
Attention, class.
I'm ready to learn. I am ready to learn.
Unfortunately, no, better was actually to play Wrath to draw a card. And then try to get the Feral Rage. Since 4 damage plus Hero Power is kind of likely. No, better was to play Nourish. No, I had a full hand. And it would be difficult to play Wrath. Maybe it was Power of the Wild into Wrath. No, better was to just go for this, I think. Well, managed to make it. And this threatens lethal on the board with the Savage Roar. So, that was pretty decent. If he had more health, he could go for like Valid Teacher, and then next turn do massive amounts of damage with, we'll put up a massive board of 2. Power of the Wild, but anyways, that's the token finish. Whew.
Instruction begins.
Wait, is this not lethal? Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah. I knew that. So that's the power of Fandral Staghome. It's the power of the Wild. And it's the possible madness that may inflict you if Yogg is in your hand. But just remember, Yogg helps those who help themselves. So if you don't have to play Yogg, you should strongly consider not playing him. But he's a really good get out of jail card.